Hey guys, this is TheTopher. Today you join me in Franklin, Tennessee for some first driving impressions on the 2025 Nissan Armada. This full-size SUV is brand new from the ground up. Most notable change, gone is the naturally aspirated V8. In its place, a twin turbocharged 3.5-liter V6, making 425 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque. Some of you may remember we were in Napa Valley, California, driving the new Infiniti QX80, essentially the more dressed up version of the Armada, and I kind of emerged from that experience thinking that didn't really meet my expectations. So I'm hoping that this slightly lower priced Armada does today. We're going to take you out on the road, show you what it's like to drive this new Armada, but first let's go ahead, jump out, show you what it looks like on the outside, we'll show you the interior, and hopefully we'll have somewhat of a verdict towards the end. You can see very similar to the QX80 design language, of course, shares many body panels. This particular Armada is a Platinum Reserve, meaning top trims with four-wheel drive are $87,000. But this one we're driving today is actually two-wheel drive, saves you a few grand off the price. This one's about $84,000. Though, of course, Nissan will sell you a base model SV with two-wheel drive. That starts at 56 grand. So quite a large price variation here with the new 2025 Armada. This tows 8,500 pounds. This particular one today finished in Coulee red with a rye interior, as you saw, kind of a saddle brown color. We have some Bridgestone Alenza Sport all-season tires and a 275/50 R22. We have a four-corner air suspension on this Platinum Reserve, so quite a lot of kit. We also have Nissan's Pro Pilot Assist 2.1, which we'll show off, of course, once we are out on the road. But let's go ahead, quickly poke around this thing. We'll show you the interior, and then we'll get out on the road and show you what it's like to drive. Power liftgate, of course, and this is a three-row SUV. We have power up and down third-row seats, power folding down second-row seats, that you do have to fold them back up manually. And then we have this small cargo area back here behind the third row seats with a little bit of space underneath. Being that this is not a hybrid or anything, we do have quite a bit of room in the back. Unlike the Toyota Sequoia, you can hear the air suspension adjusting there. We can go ahead and fold these third row seats down like so. Opens up a bit more room back here, of course. See those take their time going down. I don't always prefer power third row seats, but we do have them today. You can see a little bit of a better idea for cargo room with those folded down. You can go ahead and fold those back up, why not? And we'll shut the tailgate. You can see Nissan is kind of continuing this like floating roofline design. I was just talking to a couple of friends the other day. We were trying to think of who started this, and I think it was Nissan. You can see Armada badging here, and it kind of allows for them to do this two-tone paint, give us a black roof, and kind of add some more dimension to this design overall. Stepping into the back seat, you can see some really nice use of materials here in this Platinum Reserve trim. I haven't seen the lower trims, so I can't fully speak to those. You can see even our third row seats have been trimmed to match. Everything looks quite nice in here. Move this second row seat up, take a look at what room is like in the third row. There we go, I'll sit over here, give you guys a good idea. So actually at 5'11", I do have plenty of headroom. Sat behind where I would be sitting as well. My legroom is not too bad either. We've got cup holders. We have controls here to fold our seats as well. If you are a third row passenger, I imagine if you have children, that would not get annoying at all. Otherwise, back here, not too much going on. We've got some map lights, we have some vents, but pretty much everything you would need in a third row, I suppose. Scooch up here to the second row, go through the middle since we have our captain's chairs in this Armada. Sat behind myself at 5'11", obviously in the second row we have plenty of room as well. Some USB-C ports, some cup holders. We have a climate menu with heated seats back here. More USB-C ports. We have a traditional car charger outlet. Seat back pockets. Give you a look at our dashboard up here. We'll be looking at that quite a bit here in a second. But before we jump up front, let's pop the hood, show you this 3.5-liter V6. This is a VR35, so loosely related to what you would see in a Q50, Q60 Red Sport, or even looser to what you would see in the Nissan GTR. Though what's different about this one, as opposed to the one you see in the QX80, is this is tuned to run on 87 octane. So it does make 25 less horsepower than the QX80, but it's made to just sip 87 all day. So a little bit more of a cost-effective solution. Obviously, if you're doing any sort of heavy towing or things like that, this will run on 93 to maximize your performance. But kind of nice that they've set this up to run on 87 right off the bat. Nice looking engine cover there, plenty of room in that engine bay. Cool, guys. Well, obviously we'll get one of these back at home to give you a bit more of an in-depth tour, but let's go ahead, jump in this thing, get out on the road and see how it drives. Up front, obviously, similar trimmings to what we saw in the back seat. I love these seats. Chestnut and rye, they've called it. So, yeah, looks really nice here in this Armada. I almost called it a QX80. Okay, on the steering wheel, we have this contrast stitching on our airbag cover. You don't even get this in a lot of modern Mercedes vehicles, so that's nice to see here on a Nissan. And up front, we have two 14-inch displays. We saw this exact setup in the Infiniti QX80. The only thing I didn't super love about it is that we have this really distracting black border here in the middle that doesn't really matter for this when you're split between cluster and infotainment, but when you go into the invisible hood camera setup, which we'll go ahead and show you right now, we do have a physical button for our camera, it is a little bit distracting and it splits your view. You can see there when we make the camera screen bigger. For one, obviously the steering wheel is in the way, so you could argue that you'd have a split view regardless, but you can see it just looks a little bit cheap with that screen having just that small gap in the middle. But nonetheless, you do have a very, very large display that you are able to bring this camera up on. I see this being the most beneficial probably for off-roading, or if you're navigating some sort of skinny, narrow Starbucks drive-thru or something like that. I suppose that could be argued as well. Otherwise, though, super advanced camera system in this thing. You can see how I mean, that looks like real life out the windshield. So same sort of camera system that we saw in the QX80, and pretty impressive tech here. So my favorite part is that you get a physical button to pull the camera up, super easy access. We have a volume knob, we have a physical climate panel, though the climate screen is in the infotainment if you want to see any of your numbers, your fan speed, anything like that. But I think Nissan has utilized this climate panel quite well, and this whole switch panel all together with physical buttons. We've got a number of drive modes here. And since this is a two-wheel drive model, we do have a row of blank switches, but I'll insert a bit of B-roll so you guys can see what this would look like on a four-wheel drive model. And we also have some extra drive modes over on the left-hand side as well. Push button shifter, we have a wireless charger, some cup holders. We've got a pretty sizable center console here. I'm going to go ahead and plug my phone in for CarPlay to get us out on this drive route, though we do have wireless CarPlay and Android Auto on this 14-inch infotainment system. And I think overall ergonomics up here are quite nice. Really, really nice soft leather on this steering wheel. Feels exactly the same as the one in the QX80. And I'm pretty impressed with the use of materials up here. One thing I did not like about the QX80 was the whole center console setup. I felt that it sat up a bit too high and my elbows were very uncomfortable the whole time. But we have a pretty soft console here on this Armada. My only concern is that it does sit back kind of far, so I kind of just barely fit the threshold to rest my elbows on this comfortably. So if you're someone that's a bit shorter, you may have to rest on this material here that is not quite as soft. Okay, well, I could get carried away talking about comfy elbows, so let's go ahead and get out on the road and see what this Armada is like to drive. We also get a camera rear view mirror in this Platinum Reserve. Into reverse here, you can see those cameras come up again. Let's go ahead and disengage our parking brake. And like we saw in the QX80, ultra light steering in very slow driving situations like this. If it's anything like the QX80 though, it will weight up quite a bit once we get up to speed. It is nice to see similar dynamics at low speeds to the QX80, meaning that you don't have to spend all that much money if you want similar driving dynamics, which is nice. I suppose that's always been the case. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in the older Armada and QX80, though I did drive them both, And I was actually big fans of them both because they felt kind of old school, big V8 body on frame 04 rich SUVs, which I do quite enjoy. I understand that eventually you do have to move on. All right, let's get this out on the road and see how this V6 is. Really smooth shifts from that 9-speed automatic transmission. Nice cluster setup, I mean, similar to what we've been seeing in other Nissans lately, and we do have some steering wheel buttons to scroll ourselves through some of our different menus here. Nothing too crazy, and I do actually appreciate that the gauge cluster is not too overwhelming. Been doing a lot of idling, gas mileage showing 5 mpg average. Sounds like we do have some sort of a rattle behind that dashboard. Move some things around in the console to see if maybe that was causing it, but there's some kind of a creak or something going on over there on the right-hand side. Overall, though, it's quite serene in here if you can get past the creaking plastic over there. It's a quiet cabin. I'm a big fan of the seating position. And honestly, this is so funny to say, but I can sit in this quite a bit more comfortably than the QX80 as far as setting myself up in a comfortable driving position, resting my hands a little bit lower on the steering wheel, resting my elbows in these softer positions. And I don't feel like I'm drowning in this interior like I did in the QX80. Snow Standard, Eco, Sport, and Tow are our drive modes here. Let's throw it in Sport. And let's try out manual mode, why not? We've got some steering wheel mounted paddle shifters that do rev match. Pretty quick gear changes from the 9-speed. Doesn't really make a lot of noise, and I appreciate that. Nothing really fake piped in. It's just a quiet experience. In the QX80, lots of piped in engine noise. We also have a Klipsch 12-speaker sound system in this QX80, so not quite as many as you get in the QX80, but just from listening to this under first impressions, it sounds just about as good. And as we know, number of speakers does not always mean that you have a super high-quality sound system. So excited to test out this Klipsch. We'll give you a taste of that a little bit later. Ride quality under first impressions seems to be quite nice. With this being a body-on-frame SUV, obviously you have that little bit of bounciness, but it's not an offensive amount, and the air suspension seems to be soaking everything up quite nicely. I remember my biggest takeaway from the QX80, the thing I liked the most, was that air suspension. And this seems to be a very similar, if not identical, setup to that. This Armada just feels so much more honest. It's not trying too hard, it's not taking itself so seriously, it's just an honest, full-size, body-on-frame SUV that has some bits of leather sprinkled around it. And I like that. I think that's really all we should be getting. There's a lot of cars now that I think are just focusing way too much on trying to be overly impressive with tech. And while we do have some nice tech in this with the camera systems, everything like that, it's not overbearing. It's not intrusive. Everything in here seems very easy to use. Physical buttons for a lot of our controls. And we're going to try out this Pro Pilot Assist 2.1. Don't know why this gentleman is on the shoulder here. That's an interesting line. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get this Armada. I keep wanting to call it a QX80. Let's go ahead and get it merged on. Hopefully we're able to merge faster than 28 miles per hour. But maybe we're going to need sport mode to get around this guy. Test it out. Let's get our signal on. The signal returns to center. I don't really like that. I like a signal that clicks into place. All right, let's test our kickdown. Not bad, not bad. Smooth as butter shifts from this 9-speed automatic. Let's go into eco mode. Why not? We'll try this out on our highway section. Okay, let's see if this Pro Pilot Assist 2.1 is all it's cracked up to be. Activate ProPilot Assist. Set. Ah, there we go. All right, let's get this up to 70 miles an hour. And I can go hands-free with this, okay. All right, there's nobody coming up the left lane, so let's go ahead and execute a lane change. Looks like it does want me to have my hands on the wheel, but I am not the one changing lanes. Check traffic, okay, probably for legal reasons, they have to have it say that. Okay, let's make a lane change back to the right. Don't love that you have to have your hands on the wheel to do a lane change. That kind of defeats the purpose, in my opinion. But the technology's there if you want to use it. And I think the biggest perk here is going to be this steering assist, which it looks like potentially it's kicked me out of at this point. Oh no, it's still steering. Okay, never mind. It said something about the map being under maintenance, so I wasn't sure if I was going to get kicked off. There we go. Yep, I did get kicked off. Okay, well, you got a little bit of a taste for the ProPilot Assist 2.1 back there when it drove itself. I wouldn't say that this system is as advanced as something you'd see in a GM vehicle with Super Cruise or even Blue Cruise in a Ford, but they're trying, they're getting there. At least having the tech in this car is part of the way. We can adjust our adaptive cruise distance here with this button on the steering wheel. These are all on one big button panel, but they aren't a haptic touch. So the entire panel does actually click in. You get a pretty good feeling for what you're actually doing on the steering wheel. We've got volume controls for our 12-speaker Klipsch as well on here. And I showed you earlier, physical volume knob there on the center as well. So lots of good physical controls on this. Visibility out of this is nice as well. The camera rear view mirror does help, though even without it, I can see just fine out of that back window. Even with the third row folded up, it does just fine. Door panels are a little bit high up, but you can still kind of position your elbow on here and drive like you're driving an old school Land Cruiser, Land Rover, truck, whatever you want to say. And you can set yourself up pretty nice in this Armada to drive comfortably. Whew. All right, swerving a little bit here. I think I'm going to ditch the ProPilot Assist and do a little bit of this driving by myself. Give you guys a second to observe NVH here. It's a pretty quiet experience in this, quieter than I would have expected. Honestly, it seems on par with the QX80, and I know I'm bringing up the QX80 a lot in this video, and the reason I'm doing that is because I think there's really no reason to get that. I think you're going to get 90% of what you would get in the QX80, and as far as the driving experience goes, this feels pretty much identical. And I prefer this interior, and I think I prefer this sound system. Speaking of that, why don't we go ahead and test it out? Everything is set to its base zeroed out level here today. This is the kind of sound system that I prefer because it doesn't sound so simulated. It's not trying too hard. I don't remember exactly how many speakers were in that Klipsch in the QX80. I know it was something, I think, north of 20 speakers. This one's only 12. It's not quite as powerful, of course, as the one you'd get in the QX80, but man, it's pretty crispy. I'm excited to spend some time with this, listen to a few more tracks in here. Obviously, we only have so much time today on this first drive event. But this is a pretty impressive sound system. Everything in here is such a soft touch. Even the turn signal, even though I don't like that it returns to center, it's a very soft feel. Steering wheel's very soft. These are plasticky, but I think the same ones are in the QX80. Let's go back into sport mode. You can see traction control cutting in a bit there. Okay, can try out some dynamics here on a little bit of a twistier road. Steering does weight up quite a bit here once you are up to speed, as I suspected it would. I don't have a super great idea what's going on with the front end here, but you got to remember, big, heavy body on frame SUV. It's not a sports car, though. I think it's important to be able to confidently drive on a twisty road like this. If you're keeping up with traffic that's also going 50 miles an hour, you don't want to be white knuckling just because you're in a large vehicle. We don't have an obnoxious amount of body roll or anything like that, though it does feel absolutely massive. Partially, I think, simulated by this large steering wheel. In just the super high seating position, you do feel like you are in a bus. Let's go back into manual mode here on our 9-speed. Change some gears. Pretty decent reaction time from the paddle shifters, not lightning fast. And that V6 in this Armada does exist in the background. It really doesn't make all that much noise. They've kind of curated less focus on this V6, and I think that's a good thing. I think when you have a car like this that's existed for so long with a V8, you don't super want to draw attention to the fact that they've gone down to a V6, granted with 2 turbos, but still I think for the overall SUV vibe and strong muscular nature of this thing, we don't really want to be reminded of that V6. So if you guys can't tell, I very much prefer this over the QX80, as I thought I would. It just makes so much more sense, and it still feels just as upscale, genuinely. But the big difference here is if you get the top trim QX80 autograph, it's 110 grand. So you're saving $20,000 going for the top trim Platinum Reserve Armada in that case. And that's what I would do if I were in the market for one of these, all the way. Okay, speed limit is slowing down. Test out these brakes. Brake pedal feel is pretty decent here. There's a little bit of give in that pedal. You got to push through just a little bit to be able to get any action. But once you do, it feels okay. Really great support from these zero gravity seats. We have a ton of adjustment. We have a massage feature. Physical lumbar here on the side of the seat. We don't have to go into the infotainment to do that. See there, we also have a physical button for our massage. So everything you need is doable with your left hand or your right hand if you're on the passenger side. We'll try out this massage, see how it is. So this is just a lumbar activated massage. We don't have little massage balls in the chair like a Brookstone massage chair or something like that. But the lumbar is pretty aggressive, so it does the trick. All right, guys, well, that's just about going to wrap up our on-road portion here of the Armada. Let's go ahead and jump into a Pro 4X and see what this thing can do off-road. All right, guys, we're out here now with the Pro 4X. Going to jump in and do some off-roading and show you what that's all about. Since these are all close together, we'll insert some B-roll as we kind of talk you through what our differences are here with the Pro 4X, but most of what you need to know is down to the tires and the locking rear differential. Those are kind of our only real differences from the Platinum that we were driving earlier. As you can see, we still have a power adjust steering column. We still have these same dual 14-inch screens with the Google-based infotainment system. But you can see here our blank switch is replaced with a diff lock. We also have 9.6 inches of ground clearance in this thing. It's the same four-corner air suspension that we have in the Platinum Reserve vehicles, but this one has more drive modes, and we put it into its mud setting, which we can do here, mud and ruts. That will pull up our camera system, and it'll also raise up our suspension to give us access to that full 9.6 inches of ground clearance. We have a 33-degree approach angle, super aggressive front bumper design on this thing. 25.5 degrees of breakover and a 24.5-degree departure angle. So pretty impressive stuff here, and also appreciate that we get a rear locker. We have some Yokohama Geolander tires on this. It's a 20-inch wheel, so a little bit more of an aggressive sidewall. Once in the mud and ruts drive mode, this camera comes up automatically and stays up until 12 miles per hour, and it shuts off automatically after that. But according to the Nissan staff today, we will not be exceeding 12 because of how muddy and washed away this course has become. So probably some short off-road impressions, but we may as well show you what this Pro 4X is like. See a pretty high definition view there with that front camera, and a pretty squishy ride with this air suspension, even all the way up in mud and ruts mode. This course is pretty washed out and slippery. These Geolanders seem to be doing a pretty decent job, paired with our intelligent four-wheel drive system here. Steering is so ultra light here at low speeds. Makes it a little bit harder to place this thing. This camera view is certainly helping though, for sure. Placeability on the trail, I'll be honest guys, this thing does feel pretty huge. I feel as though I have just enough room on here. Like I said on the on-road portion though, I think just the overall like size of the steering wheel simulates bigness. Try and get around this tight corner here without falling into the tree. Good to go. Alrighty. Use that camera. Thank you, sir. Cool. Plenty of grip here. Struggles a little bit at first, but the traction control system is doing a great job as well, keeping me in line. Love this camera system as well. And this is the first ever Pro 4X Armada. Prior to this, the Pro 4X vehicles have been limited to Titan and Frontier. So now that the Titan is gone, I suppose the Armada kind of fills the void for the full-sized Pro 4X. Okay, so what this is now is going to be a demonstration of this camera system. They're going to cover the windshield, apparently, I've been told. And we have to do this relying only on the camera view. So I'm going to extend this to my full screen view here, the invisible hood situation. And I guess I'm using this instead of the windshield. So we'll see.
After they get through the second bales there.
This is terrifying. Oh my goodness. I'm cheating slightly, but mostly because I don't want to crash into a hay bale. Still using my peripheral. I actually found it to be easier to not use the full screen setup because the steering wheel blocks it, as well as this stupid thing in the middle. The separation of the screens makes it a little bit harder to see. Okay. There we go. You can see we've got our tracks on here now highlighted. So what I'm going to do is line this up like so. This is horrifying, actually. I think we might have missed it slightly there, but you get the idea. Do I get my windshield privileges back?
Yeah,
Thank you. We're going to go into neutral. We're going to try 4 low, and then I'm going to put my rear locker on. Why not? Might as well try the technology out. Don't have any sort of crazy tech like trail turn assist like you get in the Fords, but camera systems do help you place this thing nicely. I am skating all over the place. Cool, guys. Well, I hope that gives you a good idea of what the Armada Pro 4X is like off-road. Let's go ahead and get back to the Platinum Reserve and wrap the video up. And that's going to be a wrap on our first impressions here with the 2025 Nissan Armada, an SUV I think that makes quite a bit more sense than its Infiniti counterpart, as I've said probably 50 times throughout this video. This is the one that I would have. I think it's the more cost-effective and intelligent choice in this segment. So let's give you one last look at this thing, and that'll be it for us today. We'll get one of these back at home. We'll give you some more in-depth impressions, but I hope you enjoyed these first impressions here on the 2025 Armada. See our auto lock function. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you all again so much for watching. If you have any questions about this new Armada, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to get back to you. Just consider that I have only spent about an hour with this car, so no super in-depth impressions yet, but still go ahead and ask away if I missed anything. But anyways, that'll wrap it up for us today, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.